Jack walked slowly through the alien forest, his boots crunching on the soft purple moss. He had come to this planet, Ravax 4, to explore, to survive, and maybe find something worth bringing home. But what he didn't expect was a sound so soft, so broken it didn't belong in a forest full of deadly beasts and silent trees. It was crying, not the cry of an animal, not the roar of a predator. It was a voice, a child's voice, high-pitched and full of fear. Jack froze, his hand on the hilt of his knife. He listened again, heart beating faster. There it was, a whimper, then the soft words, "Please. Please don't eat me." He moved carefully, stepping over twisted roots and strange glowing plants. Behind a large rock next to the remains of a burned pod, he saw her, a small alien girl, huddled in the dirt, her arms around her legs, her body shaking. Her skin was pale blue, almost white and too thin for a child. Her hair was messy, silver strands falling over her frightened eyes. She looked up at him and screamed, "Don't eat me, don't eat me, don't!" Jack raised his hand slowly, dropping his knife. Hey, I'm not here to hurt you," he said gently. But she crawled back fast, hitting her head on the wrecked pod. Her eyes were wide, her lips dry and cracked. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. Jack took off his backpack and pulled out a ration bar. He unwrapped it slowly and placed it on the ground between them. "Here, food?" he said, keeping his voice calm. The girl looked at the bar like it might explode. She sniffed it, then looked at him again, confused and scared. "You're not going to cook me?" she whispered. Jack blinked. "What?" "No," he said, shocked. "Who told you that?" Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. She just reached for the food with shaking fingers and took a tiny bite, then another and another. She ate like an animal, fast, desperate. Scared it would be taken away, Jack didn't speak, just sat nearby, not too close, letting her eat, letting her calm down. After a few minutes, her breathing slowed. She looked at him again, her voice still a whisper. "My name is Lura," Jack nodded. "I'm Jack." She stared at him, then looked down. "I thought humans eat aliens." Jack gave a weak smile. "I don't, and anyone who told you that is lying." Lura didn't smile, but her shoulders dropped a little. She wasn't shaking as much now. She wiped her mouth with her sleeve and held the food bar close like it was treasure. Jack gently placed his jacket near her. "You're freezing," he said. She didn't move, but when the wind blew, she pulled the jacket over her legs. The sun above was fading fast. Ravax 4 had short days and dangerous nights. Jack looked around, alert. They needed shelter, but he didn't want to scare her by moving too fast. "Lura, is anyone looking for you?" he asked. She looked up, her face suddenly tight with fear. "The bad ones," she whispered. "The ones who put me in a cage. They said if I escaped, they'd find me and cook me for dinner." Jack felt cold rage in his chest. He nodded slowly. "They won't find you, not while I'm here." She studied his face like she was trying to believe him. "You won't sell me?" "No," Jack said firmly. "You're safe with me." She leaned her head against the pod wall and closed her eyes, her little hands still clutching the food bar and Jack's jacket. She was too tired to cry anymore. Jack sat beside her, watching. The trees. He had only just met her, but he already knew. He couldn't leave her alone in this cruel world. Not now, not ever, but deep in the shadows. Something else moved, eyes watching, claws twitching, breathing heavy. The forest was not empty, and Jack had no idea what was coming next. Jack didn't sleep that night. He sat with his back against the broken pod, eyes watching the forest, knife resting in his hand. Beside him, the little alien girl, Lura, slept with her arms wrapped tight around his old jacket. Her breathing was soft, but sometimes she whispered things in her sleep. Names, cries, and once, a scream so quiet it almost broke Jack's heart. By morning, the sky turned soft orange and Jack saw how thin she really was. Bones sharp under her skin, patches of bruises on her arms. But something else caught his eye. Marks, strange glowing, scars just below her sleeves. He waited until she woke and gave her another piece of ration. Laura ate slowly this time, more calm, more quiet. Her big silver eyes looked at him between bites, unsure but curious. "Do those hurt?" Jack asked gently, nodding to her arms. Laura froze, looked down at the glowing lines and pulled her sleeves down fast. She turned her head away, but Jack didn't push her. "I had scars too," Jack said, tapping his chest. Not glowing, but deep ones from war. She looked back at him slowly, eyes searching his face. "You were in a cage too?" she asked. He nodded once. "In a way, yeah, I was stuck. People controlled me, told me who to fight, when to sleep." He paused, then added, "Then I broke free." Laura stared for a long time, then whispered, "I was taken when I was small. They said I was pretty and soft, so I would taste sweet." Jack clenched his fists. "They said humans pay the most, that they want alien girls for dinner." She touched the mark on her arm. "This was from the shock stick. If I cried, they burned me." Jack wanted to scream, but he stayed calm for her. He reached out slowly and offered his hand. She looked at it, unsure, then gently placed her tiny fingers in his palm. Her skin was cold, her fingers trembling, but she didn't pull away. "They took my sister too," she said suddenly. "Myra." Jack looked at her. "Is she still alive?" Laura nodded slowly. "She was in the other cage, but when the fire started, we got separated." Tears welled in her eyes. "I ran into the forest. I thought she followed me, but I never saw her again." Jack squeezed her hand gently. "Then we'll find her," he said, "I promise." Suddenly a sharp sound echoed through the trees. Crack. Jack stood fast, eyes scanning, blade ready. Laura crouched low, eyes wide. With fear in the mud near the pod, Jack spotted it. Tracks, not animal, not human. Large clawed footprints deep in the earth. Fresh. "We're being followed," he said softly. "Can you walk?" Laura nodded quickly, standing with weak legs. Jack packed fast, gave her some water, and they moved. Not toward the crash trail, not toward the skyport, but deeper into the jungle. Toward an old mining zone Jack remembered from his old maps. As they walked, Laura stayed close, eyes watching the trees. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Jack didn't stop. "Because no one helped me when I needed it," he said. "And because I see a fighter in you." Laura blinked. "I'm not strong," she whispered. "You survived the cage. You ran from the fire. You're still here," Jack said. "That's strength." She looked down, then up again. "Are you going to keep me?" she asked. Jack looked back at her. "I'm not your owner, Laura," he said softly. "But if you want to stay with me, you can." She gave the smallest nod, then said, "Then I choose to stay." But just as those words left her mouth, the air behind them shifted. Something moved in the trees, too quiet for a beast, too fast for wind. Jack turned sharply, eyes scanning, blade raised. Nothing. But he knew. They weren't alone anymore. Jack and Laura moved carefully through the dense alien jungle. The trees above had long purple leaves that whispered with the wind. Each step was slow. Each sound made both of them turn their heads. Jack held a plasma blade in one hand and kept Laura close with the other. They hadn't spoken much since the last strange sound. But every time Jack looked at Laura, her eyes told him she was trying to be brave. Still, her tiny hand shook in his. She didn't ask where they were going. She just followed, one tired step at a time. Soon they found a dry cave behind a thick curtain of vines. It smelled like stone and old roots, but it was safe. Jack cleared a spot, set a small fire using his portable spark kit. Laura sat down slowly, wrapping his jacket tighter around her thin frame. He gave her a chunk of soft root, a type of alien plant he knew was edible. Laura looked at the food, then looked at him. Her eyes narrowed, half doubt, half fear. "It's not poisoned," Jack said, sitting down beside her. "I've eaten it dozens of times." She sniffed it, just like before. Then slowly she took a small bite. The root was sweet and soft, and her eyes widened. "You like it?" Jack asked with a smile. Laura gave a slow nod. "It doesn't burn," she said, "or sting." She took another bite, then another. This time, she didn't eat like an animal. She chewed slow, thinking, watching him. After a few minutes, Jack handed her a bottle of water. She drank without spilling. Her hands were steadier now. Then something happened that surprised them both. Laura scooted closer, just a little, not enough to touch, but enough to show she didn't want distance anymore. Why? "Are you kind?" she asked softly. No one was kind in the cages. Jack didn't answer right away. He looked into the fire and remembered the faces of men he once called friends, men who left him behind when war broke out. "I guess I'm tired of being like them," he finally said. "Kindness is rare in the galaxy, but that doesn't mean we should throw it away." Laura watched the flames dance. Her eyes reflected the light, but also pain. Then, in a quiet voice, she whispered, "I used to sing before they took me." Jack blinked, surprised. "Sing?" She nodded. "Myra and I used to hum old songs from our planet. Our mother said the stars listen when children sing." Jack smiled gently. "Then maybe the stars heard you." Laura hugged her knees and rested her head. Her voice, tired but soft, began to hum. A strange melody filled the cave, slow and alien. But there was something warm in it, something pure. Jack didn't understand the words, but the sound wrapped around them like a blanket. He leaned back and closed his eyes, letting the song fill the silence. For the first time since he landed on Ravax 4, he didn't feel alone. And Laura, for the first time in her short, painful life, felt safe. Later that night, she crawled a little closer. Then carefully, she laid down beside him, not touching, but near enough to share warmth. "If I wake up screaming, don't leave," she whispered. "I won't," Jack replied without hesitation. She closed her eyes and soon, her breathing evened out. Jack watched her sleep, the glow of the fire flickering across her face. He saw her scars, her thin frame, her sharp bones. But he also saw something else, strength. She had trusted him with her name, her story, her song, and now her sleep. It wasn't much, but it meant everything. Suddenly, something outside the cave snapped. A branch breaking under weight. Jack sat up fast, grabbing his blade. He stepped quietly to the entrance and looked into the dark. Nothing, but then, two glowing yellow eyes blinked in the trees, watching, waiting. Jack stepped back and blocked the entrance with branches. He wouldn't sleep that night, because whatever was out there, it wasn't done following them. But Jack wasn't just a wanderer anymore. He had someone to protect. The morning mist hung low over the jungle, thick and cold. Jack stepped out of the cave, blade in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. Laura stayed inside, wrapped in his jacket, watching him with quiet fear. He had seen the eyes last night, yellow, sharp, and too smart to be a wild animal. Someone was hunting them, and they were getting closer. Jack checked the ground, found the broken twig again and deeper claw marks in the soil. He came back inside, crouched near Laura and whispered, "We can't stay here, someone's tracking us." Laura didn't argue. She stood slowly, nodded, and reached for his hand. Jack tightened his grip, and they moved deeper into the jungle, away from the crash trail. As they walked, Laura's steps grew heavier. Her body was still weak, but her spirit was strong. She didn't complain, not once. Jack could see her trying, pushing herself even as her feet dragged. They reached an old path, half buried in vines, barely visible now. Jack remembered it. From the old mining records, the outpost nearby had been shut down years ago, but it still might have supplies, and maybe shelter. He led her along the path, watching every step. Suddenly, Laura froze. She pointed to the ground. "There," she whispered. Jack knelt down and brushed aside the moss. A thin metal loop, sharp and almost invisible, glinted in the dirt. A pressure trap. "Good eyes," Jack muttered, slowly disarming it with a wire tool. They moved ahead, but now both were fully alert. And then Jack saw it. A net hidden under the roots of a wide tree. It had been used recently. Its rope still fresh. Another trap, this time designed to spring upward and drag its target into the trees. This isn't random, Jack said. They knew someone might come this way. Lura's eyes widened in horror. This is the path I escaped from, she whispered. They brought cages through here. Jack's stomach turned. It wasn't just a jungle, it was a hunting ground. Someone had been catching aliens here for a long time. They stepped carefully around the danger zone, but the trees seemed to close. In tighter the farther they went, the air grew heavy, the light dimmer. Then they heard it. Click. Jack turned instantly, blade raised. A voice came from the trees, deep and cruel. Well, well, look what the forest dragged in. Two figures stepped out from behind thick trunks, tall, armored, and holding stun rifles. Alien hunters wearing black tech armor and smirking like they'd already won. One of them looked down at Lura and grinned. Didn't think we'd lose our dinner and find it walking back to us. Jack stepped in front of her, eyes locked on them. She's not yours, he growled. The hunter laughed. She's not yours either, human, unless you paid for her. I don't buy children, Jack said sharply. The second hunter raised his rifle. Then maybe you'll die for one. Jack dropped his pack and charged. The plasma blade lit up in his hand, glowing hot. The fight exploded into chaos. Jack ducked under the first blast, rolled forward, and slashed the hunter's arm. Sparks flew as armor cracked, but the second hunter tackled Jack to the ground, pinning him hard. Lura screamed. Without thinking, she grabbed a rock and hurled it at the hunter's head. It bounced off his helmet, but it was enough. Jack pushed, free, stabbed upward, and the hunter howled. The first one limped away, blood dripping from his side. He vanished into the trees. The second fell back, coughing, his weapon sparking. Jack stood over him, breathing heavy, blade still raised. Next time you touch a child, he said coldly, make sure there's no human nearby. Lura rushed to Jack, hands shaking. He knelt, checked her quickly. No wounds, just terror. But as he looked into her eyes, something had changed. This wasn't just fear anymore. This was trust, real, unshaken trust. She grabbed his hand tight. I thought they'd take me again, she whispered. But you fought for me. Jack nodded. I'll keep fighting as long as you need me. And in that moment, they weren't just a human and an alien child anymore. They were something more, something stronger. But the jungle wasn't finished with them yet. Somewhere deeper inside, metal doors waited, and behind those doors, another girl. Jack hadn't forgotten Lura's sister, and neither had the ones who took her. Jack's body ached, his shoulder bleeding where the hunter's weapon grazed him, but his grip on the plasma blade stayed firm. Beside him, Lura clung to his arm, eyes wide, her breath fast. The jungle around them felt tighter now. The trees, no longer just trees, they were watching, listening, hiding secrets. The wounded hunter had escaped, but Jack knew it wasn't over. One would return with others. They had broken a rule. They didn't just take back the escaped food. They had hurt a customer and, worse, lost their prize. Jack pulled Lura into the trees again, this time heading toward the old mining outpost. Not for safety, but for answers. Lura had said her sister, Myra, was taken into the cages near this area. If she was still alive, she'd be there. But Jack also knew they were running out of time. His wound bled slowly down his side, his vision getting blurry. Still he walked, because Lura looked at him like he was her whole world now, and he couldn't let that world fall. They reached the ridge just before sunset from the hill. They saw it, an old metal compound half buried in jungle roots, steel walls rusted, light towers blinking dim red. The feeder station. Lura froze. I know this place, she whispered. That's where they took Myra. Jack pulled out a small scope and checked the perimeter. 2 guards armed and bored stood near the gate. He counted 4 more patrols on the outer wall. Too many to take head on. He needed another way in. He scanned the back of the building and spotted a drainage tunnel, small, half hidden by vines. Come on, he whispered. We're going in quiet. They crawled through the tunnel, tight, wet, filled with crawling things. Lura didn't complain. She followed behind him, her hand always touching the back of his boot, as if she was scared he'd vanish too. They came out behind a broken machine room. The air inside the building smelled like oil and death. Jack moved fast and low, checking corners, following the map in his mind. They passed locked doors, empty cages, and then one cage wasn't empty. A girl, pale, thin, and silent, sat curled inside. Her eyes closed, arms wrapped around her legs. Laura gasped. "Myra," she whispered, rushing forward. Jack grabbed her and held her back. "Wait," he said. "It could be a trap." But Laura shook her head. "It's her, I know it, please." Jack nodded and scanned the area. No alarms, no cameras active. He knelt and opened the lock with his blade. It clicked, and the door swung open. Laura ran in and hugged her sister. "Myra, wake up, it's me," she cried. Myra blinked slowly. "Laura," she whispered weakly. "Is this real?" Jack checked the room. Something was wrong. It was too quiet, too easy. And then the floor shook. A siren blared. Someone had triggered a silent alarm. From the hallway, loud footsteps came fast. Voices shouted. Weapons clicked. Jack picked up Myra in his arms and grabbed Laura's hand. "Run," he said. "Now." They raced back the way they came, but guards poured in from both sides. Jack kicked a vent cover off and shoved the girls inside. "Crawl," he ordered. "I'll hold them back," Laura screamed. "No, come with us." But Jack stood at the vent with his blade ready. "I'll be right behind you, go." The guards entered, firing stun rounds. Jack ducked, rolled, and slashed. The room lit up with sparks and screams. He fought like a storm, fast, precise, unrelenting. He wasn't just protecting a child anymore, he was fighting for something deeper. For a girl who sang to the stars, for a sister left behind in the dark, for a piece of himself that still believed in saving someone. When the last guard fell, Jack dropped his blade, panting hard. His hands shook, his wound worse now. But from the vent, a tiny voice cried, "Jack!" He turned and crawled through the tight space. Laura met him on the other side, tears in her eyes. "You came," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "Promised I would." He looked down at Myra, who had fainted in his arms. "We're not safe yet," he said. "We need to get far away from here." And as they vanished into the jungle once more, the compound behind them started to shake. The power overload Jack had triggered before the fight now reached its peak. A massive explosion tore through the sky, fire lighting up the night. Jack didn't look back. He had the girls, and that was all that mattered now. The explosion behind them still echoed in the jungle. Orange fire lit up the sky for a few moments, then faded into thick black smoke. Jack didn't stop running. He carried Myra in his arms, her body limp but still breathing. Laura ran beside him, holding his jacket tight and glancing back with fear in her eyes. They didn't speak. Every sound in the forest felt louder now. Snapping, branches, rustling leaves, distant growls. Jack's legs ached. His wound burned worse with every step. But he couldn't let go, not when both girls needed him. Finally, they reached a small clearing near a shallow stream. Jack lowered Myra onto a patch of moss and fell to his knees, gasping for air. Laura knelt beside her sister and gently brushed the silver hair from her face. "She's alive," she whispered. "She's really here." Jack opened his pack and pulled out his last emergency stim. He injected Myra's arm carefully. "Come on, little one, wake up," he muttered. "You're not going out like this." Myra stirred, her fingers twitching, then slowly her eyes opened. She blinked, confused. "Laura?" she whispered weakly. "I thought I was dreaming." Laura hugged her tightly, tears falling silently. "I found you," she said. "We're safe now, Myra. We're free." Jack leaned against a tree, watching them with a soft smile. It was the first time he saw Laura truly smile, not just relief, but joy. Real joy. But it didn't last long. Myra coughed and tried to sit up. Her body was thin, weaker than Laura's, her eyes sunken from lack of food and sleep. "We need help," Jack said quietly. "Food, medicine, shelter?" Laura turned to him, her smile fading. "Where will we go?" Jack stared into the trees, thinking. There was one place, an old supply bunker deep in the outer zone. It hadn't been used in years, but the system AI might still work. If we move fast, we can get there before nightfall, he said. And maybe get the med drone online. They lifted Myra together, Laura helping hold her sister's arm over her shoulder. Step by step, they pushed forward. Every time Myra stumbled, Jack caught her. Every time Jack slowed from pain, Laura looked back to make sure he was still there. They weren't just a team anymore, they were a family. By late evening, they reached the edge of the bunker. It was hidden under an old hill covered in vines. Jack tapped his wristband against the access panel. A soft beep, then a quiet hiss. The doors opened. Inside, the lights flickered weakly, but the air was clean. Jack helped the girls sit on a padded bench and moved fast to activate the terminal. System power low, the machine said. Med drone status offline. Jack cursed under his breath. But Laura came to his side and touched his arm. "Thank you," she said. "You got her back? Just like you said?" Jack looked at her tired eyes, the hope shining through the exhaustion. "I would have burned the whole jungle to find her," he said quietly. He patched up Myra's wounds the best he could, used the last of the clean water to wash her face and give her a sip. She smiled weakly and whispered, "Is he our new father?" Laura blushed, but Jack chuckled. "I'm just the guy who didn't leave you behind." That night they curled up together in the dim bunker. Jack lay near the wall, Laura on one side, Myra on the other. For the first time, the girls slept without shaking, without fear, without cages. Jack watched them as he drifted off. He remembered the words Laura had spoken on the first night. "I thought humans eat aliens." Now she knew better. He didn't taste flesh. He tasted something deeper, trust, connection, something worth protecting. Outside the bunker, the forest was quiet, but deep in the shadows, other eyes were watching. Not hunters, not monsters, but survivors. Others who had escaped. Others who had heard the explosion, and now they were moving because news had spread. A human came and he didn't take. He saved. The old bunker walls hummed faintly, the weak power system trying to keep the air clean. Jack sat near the console, his wounded shoulder freshly wrapped with cloth he tore from his shirt. Laura and Myra lay asleep beside him on a padded corner, their small bodies warm under his jacket. It was quiet, too quiet. But for the first time in days, it wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of peace. At least for now. Jack closed his eyes, head leaning against the wall. He didn't know how long they could stay hidden. He didn't know if other hunters would come. But he did know one thing. He wouldn't leave the girls again, not unless he stopped breathing. A soft beep echoed from the terminal. Jack opened one eye and looked. The med drone had rebooted just enough for emergency scans. He quickly activated it and the small bot floated toward the girls. It scanned Myra first. Malnourished, dehydrated, but alive. Then Laura. Wounds healing. Signs of trauma, but stabilizing. Treatment recommended, the bot said in a soft tone. Jack smiled and nodded. Do your best, little guy. The drone gave both girls a small injection. Painkillers, nutrients, stabilizers. Myra stirred, her eyelids fluttering. Jack? She mumbled. I had a dream. I was flying. You're not dreaming, he said gently. You're safe. Laura sat up next to her, blinking at the drone with sleepy eyes. You fixed it, she said to Jack. Even when you were hurt. Jack shrugged, wincing at the pain. I'm used to patching things together, he said. Old soldiers learn fast. Laura reached out and touched his hand. You didn't have to save us, she said softly. But you did. Jack looked at her, eyes serious but kind. I didn't save you, he said. You saved me. Laura blinked, confused. But you fought the hunters, you carried us, you got us out. Jack nodded. Yes, but before that I was just walking. Alone, looking for food, trying to survive. He looked down at his hands. I didn't feel like a person anymore. He looked back up at her. But then I heard your voice and I knew something inside me was still alive. Laura smiled, just a little. but it lit up her whole face. Suddenly, a knock echoed from the outer bunker door. 3 short taps. Jack stood fast, blade in hand, the girls tensed, crawling behind him. He stepped to the door panel and spoke. "Who's there?" A voice replied, soft but shaky. "Refugees. Please, we followed the smoke." Jack opened the camera feed. 4 aliens, dirty and tired, holding injured children. They weren't hunters. They were survivors. Jack looked at Lura. She nodded slowly. "Let them in," she said. He opened the chakra, and the group stepped in slowly. One woman collapsed to her knees. "Thank you," she said, tears in her eyes. "We heard someone destroyed the feeder station. We didn't believe it was true." Jack looked around the room, then at the girls. He took a deep breath. "It's time to make this place more than just a hiding spot," he said. "We can turn it into a shelter, maybe even a home." He pulled out the emergency comm beacon from his pack. It still had 1 burst left. Jack reprogrammed it to send out a simple message. "Safe zone, all welcome, no chains here." The survivors began to settle in. Jack shared the food, started repairs, made beds from supply crates. Lura helped care for the youngest kids. Myra sat with the others, telling them stories of the stars their mother once told. As night fell again, Lura sat beside Jack, the firelight dancing on her soft blue skin. She looked at him with wonder. "When I first saw you," she said, "I thought you'd eat me." Jack chuckled. "You weren't the first to say that." "But you didn't," she continued. "You tasted something else, didn't you?" Jack looked at her, eyes warm and full of meaning. "Yeah," he said. "I tasted hope." She leaned against him gently. And for the first time, in a galaxy full of fear and cruelty, an alien girl fell asleep beside a human, not as prey, not as property, but as family.